Hello everyone, this is for P1 for pre-calculus, the first section of pre-calc. One of the first things I want to start out with is making sure that you guys remember the stuff about the coordinate axes that you need to. So obviously it's the XY axis. This is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Is it paramount that you use Roman numerals? I don't think so. I don't know if I've ever really seen it written without Roman numerals, but I'm certainly not going to have a canary if you guys write quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Yeah, I think it's just fine. I'm just letting you know they're always been written in Roman numerals. Why? I don't have a great justification for you, other than it's always been done that way, so that's why I'm saying. If you guys want to write it with regular numbers, go for it. I'm not going to be crabby about it. You need to remember the coordinates. In this quadrant, quadrant 1 are always plus plus, in quadrant 2 it's minus plus, quadrant 3 it's minus minus, and quadrant 4 it's plus minus. Using that information, we're going to work with questions like this. These ones, it's wondering what quadrant is XY in given the following conditions. So as you can read, it says x is less than 0, so in other words x is negative, y is positive. So where are you sitting? You're sitting in quadrant 2. X times y is positive. So there's a couple different options here. That's what this says. It says that it's positive. It's greater than 0. As I'm hoping you guys jump straight to it, if you have plus a positive, something positive times something positive, you're going to get something positive. Well, likewise, something negative times something negative is also going to be something positive. So you're either in quadrant 1 or you're in quadrant 3. So there's two answers to this one. All right. This idea carries through when it's a fraction. If you had plus over minus, you're going to be less than 0, or minus over plus, you're going to be less than 0. Where are these occurring? So this is your y, this is your x, this is your y, this is your x. Where is it occurring? It's occurring where the signs are not the same, meaning here the signs are the same, here the signs are the same. If you made a fraction with these two, with this one or with this one, you're going to end up being positive. So this is saying the signs are not the same. Okay? And it's negative. So you're in quadrant 2 and 4. Not trying to make that too difficult to understand. I'm just saying that this one is saying the signs are the same. Okay, so 1 and 3. This one is saying the signs are not the same. The signs are opposite. Okay? It would be this likewise for this one if it was x times y is less than 0. Same idea. That being the same idea as this one is what I was drawing it to. Okay, I was just writing it back up here because it was a product. Then it would also be 2 and 4. All right, some kids have some difficulty in understanding this next one. This next style of question, and it's totally understandable because you've never seen anything like this. All right, when you guys read this, it's not saying x is negative. That's not what this information says. It says it's the opposite of x. Why is that important to understand is because this symbol in front tells you nothing about the sign or the value of x. It's saying whatever x is, change its sign. It doesn't say the value of x is negative. It's not telling you x is less than 0. That's not what this says. This only says change the sign on the x. All right. This piece of information says you're currently standing in quadrant 2. So you're currently standing somewhere in this quadrant. And you got there by changing the sign on the x. Where is the original coordinate xy? Let's try and let that sink in just a second. You've changed the sign on the x, and you're currently standing in quadrant 2. Where did you come from? Well, you didn't mess with the y value, so you're going to be just as far up in the original question, in the original coordinate. But you got there by changing the sign on the x. So change the sign on the x back, and that means you're going to be standing somewhere in quadrant 1. So the answer to this question is quadrant 1. All right, let me try and phrase this to you a little bit differently. If you have trouble with this style of question, Go to the quadrant that they're telling you that you're currently standing in and pick a coordinate. How about negative 10, 7? Somewhere out in here is negative 10, 7. Change the sign on the x back. Where are you then? You're standing at 10, 7. Where is that coordinate? That's in quadrant 1. So if doing it generically is bothering you, pick an actual concrete coordinate and work with that coordinate. All right, let's try this one. Again, you're standing in quadrant 2. You're somewhere out here in quadrant 2. You got there by changing the sign on the y. Where are you? Well, if you change the sign on the y and that produced a positive value for y, that means that you started out in quadrant 3. That's where the original coordinate xy is. Notice, it's telling you you're in quadrant 2, and look at x. There's no sign with it. Again, this isn't telling you x is negative. Okay? It says that you change the sign on the y value to get in quadrant 2. If you change the sign on the y, that means y is now positive, because in the second quadrant, your y value is always going to be positive. So if you change the sign on the y and ended up with positive, that means it had to start out negative. So that means you're starting out in quadrant 3. You change the sign on both x and y, and you're currently standing somewhere in quadrant 2. Where did you start out at? You started out in quadrant 4, because you're let's pick a point. How about negative 3, 5? Change both the signs. 3, negative 5. Where's 3, negative 5? It's down here in quadrant 4. So your answer is quadrant 4. Okay. All right, distance and midpoint formulas. The distance formula is really just the Pythagorean theorem. Now remember, the Pythagorean theorem was a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So if you're solving for c, you're just going to square root both sides. All right, technically it's plus and minus. All right, now these are going to be distances, so you're not going to get any negative distances. So it's just going to be the positive value. Now I'll write out the formal definition for the distance formula in just a second. I want you to see that it's the Pythagorean theorem. All right, if I'm going to draw a right triangle here, I'm looking for the distance between the 2 points, so I'm looking for C. I can find the length of this side and find the length of this side. This side is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units long. How do you get 5 using these numbers? Notice it's the difference in your x values. It's the difference of your x's. 7 minus 2 is going to give you 5. All right? This side, if I count 1, 2, 3, it's 3 units. Well, look at the difference in the y values. 5 minus 2. Oops, I didn't mean parentheses. 5 minus 2. Well, it doesn't hurt it, but it's 3. Now, is it going to matter if I did 7 minus 2 or 2 minus 7? Well, initially you might say yes. But remember, you're going to end up squaring these things. You're going to square this side and square that side. So initially you might go, but it's negative. Yeah, okay. But you're going to square it. So you're going to get 25 plus 9 either way. So when I square these, I still get 25 plus 9. Okay, because I'm doing the Pythagorean theorem. Then you have to square root it. So you get the square root of 34. So going back to these two things here, and then you added them together, really what we did is you went 7 minus 2 and 5 minus 2, and you squared both of them, so you took the difference of the x's and the difference of the y's is what you did. So the formal definition of the distance formula, oops, let's get this out of there. That looks like junk. Stop trying to save it. Just redo it. It's the difference in your x's plus squared plus the difference in your y's squared. That would be the distance formula. When you guys forget it, Just remember, it's just the Pythagorean theorem. Draw yourself a picture, figure it out. All right? Midpoint. I want to find the coordinate of the middle. Well, midpoint is middle. Middle is average. Just average the x and y separately and we'll have the coordinate of the midpoint. So let's just average them. So average the x's. How do you average? You add them together and divide by 2. No, you cannot cancel those 2's. And this is a coordinate. Average the y values. Again, no, you cannot cancel. So it would be 9 halves and 7 halves would be the coordinate of the midpoint. Okay, so that's it. That's all for this section.